Hello and welcome to the Bittersweet podcast. I'm your host, Justin McRoberts, and I have been 100% on a bus called struggle putting this episode together because my mind has been a particular kind of mushy. I just haven't been able to articulate or stay focused. So this is probably like the 10th, no joke, the 10th attempt to actually shoot this. And I would find myself in the middle of answering questions and just like forgetting what I was saying in the middle of the sentence. Now that's not just an age thing, although I'm going on 52, so maybe it's part of it. What I realized though is there's a question this week that gets to this. Is my kids, both my kids went back to school yesterday, and I'm having like a reaction to that, and I experienced a little bit of like I let myself experience a little bit of sad, and then I was like, well, I told some folks really specifically. I said, well, I didn't want to like stay in the sad, so I stacked my day with a lot of work. I had some calls and I got to shoot this podcast, and I'm gonna just stay busy. It's so immature. And like every time I would go to do this, like my brain would freeze, that's part of what creative work does. Is it calls attention to. That's part of what creative work has done for me for a long time. Is it calls attention to the stuff that's really going on in me. So when I have blocks or something like that, when I feel blocked, that's usually about something else. There's no such thing. We've talked about this before. And there's no such thing as an actual creative block, like as if a creative block exists as a thing. A creative block is a way we talk about our inability to make what we want to make, and that usually is because there's something else happening. Sometimes it's exhaustion. In this case, it was like sadness and grief. So this is the question. Originally I had this as like, this is the third question, and I couldn't wait to get to it, and it was lingering in the back of my head. So I'm just going to make it the first question. So we're just going to talk about what's going on with me for a minute. And the question was, any practices or wisdom or blessings for grieving the end while being excited for the new? Any practices or wisdom or blessings for grieving the end while being excited for the new? It has been like a quintessential element to parenting. That I'm constantly in these threshold moments between what has been and what is about to be. So that like this is like I live here. My son is now 15. He started his sophomore year. I'm choking up. Started his sophomore year in high school. Man, it was like he was in elementary school like yesterday. It's crazy. My daughter started third grade, and she was like this big yesterday, right? The passage of time, once in a while, the passage of time really messes with my head. Like I look up and realize, like, whoa, the way life was working that I enjoyed is no longer, and I've got to get ready for and get excited for what comes next. So my son being a sophomore, and being 15, gonna get a driver's license, start driving. All those things are exciting, but I want to be able to let go of what was in order to enjoy what's coming. And it's really hard when I have been really enjoying the way things have been. So I will try to answer this question. Well, I'm going to answer this question a little bit, but mostly I'm going to talk about how this has gone for me and how this works for me. Are there particular practices and ways to let go of what was and get ready for what's next, to grieve the passing while getting excited for the future? Yeah, sure, there are. things like the practice of the examine, like in a threshold moment, when I realize that a season is ending and a new one is coming, to actually create space, make space to take a for realsies accounting of what has been. To look back, actually maybe even use the calendar. And I'll do this personally. I'll have folks do this pretty regularly. Is we'll do like some sort of lectio, attention paying to like a scripture or a painting. I'll actually have people do this with a calendar. Look back at your calendar over the last week or the last month or the last year and pay attention to where your heart like either grieves, like where you're like, oh, that sucked, or like where your heart is alive, like, oh, that was such a wonderful time. To actually like let your heart look back over. Take the time to let your heart look back over the previous season to see where were you most alive, where were you least alive. That both things are kind of the practice of letting go, and then do the same thing with the calendar going on and moving into the future. Like what's actually coming up. Look at the specific things. What am I nervous about? What am I excited about? Using the calendar as a spiritual tool is a really wonderful way to attend to the passing of time as a spiritual practice, which is part of what this gets at. The other part of this that goes deeper for me is when I move too fast, and I have a tendency to do this. I think a lot of us do. I definitely have a tendency to do this. When I move too fast in my life, if I'm not taking the time to appreciate my life as I'm living it, then when these threshold moments show up, they're more shocking. So, as practices in wisdom go, this is why the practice of Sabbath is so insanely vital to living a good and whole life. Is the Sabbath, instead of waiting for the threshold moment to make itself present to us, like I actually intentionalize some threshold moments. I stop at the end of a week and hit pause before the beginning of a new week and say, how did this go? Where was I most alive? Where was I least alive? Where did I see God? Where was I? What did I enjoy? Where did I feel desolation? Where I felt absent? Where did I feel consolation? Where I felt really present? Like I take accounting of the last few days, and then I can look forward to the next few days. And again, like what am I excited about? What am I nervous about? If and as I'm doing that regularly, then when these threshold moments come, the beginning of a new school year, they're not quite. I'm still feeling it, but they're not quite as shocking. It is. Time moves really quickly. I mean, it's Ferris Bueller, isn't it? Ferris Bueller said life moves pretty fast, and if you don't stop every once in a while, you might miss it. It's 100% true. Specifically if we're living lives that we are enjoying. This is an assumption I'm making from the question. Any practices of wisdom or blessing for grieving the end while being excited for the new. If we're grieving the end, it's usually because there's something about that season, the previous chapter that we were actually enjoying and liking. When I'm having a good time, time moves pretty quickly. All the more reason to stop regularly and pay attention to what is making my life so good, so that when that season ends, it's not quite as shocking. So I think the practice of examine, specifically the examine of a calendar season, is a really great practice in a threshold moment. But leading up to that moment, regularly stopping to pay attention to the goodness of your life. The way I teach it, the way I say it in teachings when I talk about Sabbath practice, is we have to let the goodness of God catch up with us, or we will be always 2 steps ahead of like how good God is being to us and how good our lives actually are. When you're living a good life, stop to pay attention to what's making it so good so you can live in thankfulness. And when that season ends, that grief doesn't run quite so deep and doesn't quite take over, so that we can move into what comes next. It can be really hard, can it not, to be thankful for what comes next when what was so good that it's hard for us to let it go. Enjoy it enough that you can let it go when the time comes. Whew. Now I feel like I can move on to these other questions. Oh man, I love my kids. You only get so many summers, y'all. You only get so many times to be present to your kids. And I will say this, coming into parenthood, a lot of the stories that I heard from people, from women and from men, about being a parent were kind of nightmare stories. Were stories about like how hard, the terrible twos or the whatever threes. And then as time went on, like hearing more and more parents talk about like how much they look forward to their kids being out of the house, and you know, they look forward to launching their kids. And there's goodness that comes from launching their kids, but I just have never found, for me, I've never found that like I have not yet gotten to a place in which I'm really looking forward to my kids being gone. That doesn't resonate with me. Being a dad is like the best part of my life, and I think because of the practice of Sabbath, I'll be 100% honest, because of the practice of Sabbath, and because we get to stop regularly to pay attention to one another and like enjoy our lives together, like I'm so thankful and happy for the life that I'm living with my kids as a dad. Like, I'm not looking forward to it being over. I think when the time comes and they launch into the world and they're not living in my house anymore, like, I know I will grieve, but I think I'm setting myself up well enough to enjoy the life I've got with them while I have it, that it'll be easier to let go when the time comes. I won't have as much of that, I won't have as much of that worry that I've missed things, because I'm paying attention as we go along. In the meantime, whew, man, I want every moment of it I can get while I've got them. Whew. All right. This question: how to discern the difference between wisdom, and specifically the wisdom to say no to a good thing, versus when it's fear. So how to discern the difference between wisdom and fear. And this specific wisdom is the wisdom that allows you to say no to a good option, versus when you're just experiencing fear. The way I answered it online is I said this can be really tough and requires help, friendship, community, and coaching. This is part of why I do what I do as a coach. That said, first, entertain your worst case scenario and see if you find courage there. And then secondly, fear will likely follow you regardless of what you choose. So I'm going to hang out on the second part of this and talk about the relationship between fear and wisdom. Fear often comes with when it comes to decision making and this kind of discernment, with one of two things. One is fear comes with, if I'm choosing between good things, there's a worry that like I'm going to choose like the wrong good thing, or I'm going to choose the wrong good thing. I'll stay there for a second. Or I'm going to choose, or like I'm really afraid of not getting the other thing. So choosing the wrong good thing. There's a difference between wisdom and right thinking. One of the tricks that modernity played on us was to couch all of our decision making in very black and white thought. That there's a right decision and there's a wrong decision. And if we make the right decision, things will go well. If we make the wrong decision, things will not go well. What wisdom is actually this altitudinal perspective on all of our choices. And it puts us in a position to say, like, whatever it is you choose, there will be repercussions, there will be fruits, and there will be damages. Whatever you choose, there will be a mix of positive and negative. In other words, if I choose if I choose A, I want to, is it right or wrong? There's this choice, there's choice A and choice B. If I choose A, there will be fruits from that, and there will be damage from that. If I choose B, there will be fruits from that, and there will be damage from that. It doesn't make them necessarily equal. It just means each one of them will come with like its own set and a different set of positives and negatives. What wisdom would have us consider is not so much like what decision are you going to make, but will you be responsible to the fruits and to the damages on the other side of that choice. That's what wisdom actually is. It gets us altitude over right and wrong thinking, and helps us, theoretically, helps us be a little bit less afraid of making that choice. Making a choice between two good things really is just a sheer act of will. Which one do you want? What do you want more? Because oftentimes it's not a matter of which one is right or which one is wrong. It's more a matter of like, which set of responsibilities are you more ready to handle on the other side of that choice. So if you choose A, here's this list of positive things that you're still going to be responsible for. These fruits. Can you celebrate these fruits? Can you invite people into these fruits? And then here are all these like pieces, these damages that choice will also come along with. Can you be responsible to handling and putting back together these pieces? Same thing with option B. Which set of fruits and damages are you willing to or wanting to and prepared to actually deal with? That's what wisdom would have us consider. Which brings me back to the question of fear. When we come to these moments where we're choosing between good things, fear might not be the enemy of wisdom. Fear might just be data. And it might be your mind, your heart, your soul, your body saying, hey, pay attention to this. So follow the thread of that fear. Like, what is it exactly? If you can, as exactly as you can be, what exactly am I afraid of? It may be your soul saying, hey, this thing you think you're prepared for, you're not prepared for it. Or maybe your soul saying, there's some things you're not considering about this choice you're going to make. Fear is just data, usually from our bodies and from our subconscious, asking us to pay attention to things that we're not quite paying attention to yet, or asking us to like own up to things we're not owning up to quite yet. Fear is not all the time an enemy of a good life. Fear can be data that helps us make wise decisions. And that wisdom, again, has more to do with not making a right or wrong decision in the moment, but what are we prepared to handle on the other side of that decision? The other question that came along with this one, it was immediately right after, it actually falls in the same basic category, is how can you be sure of a calling from God? What if you get it right? What if you get it wrong? What if I got it? What if you get it wrong? Let me actually read it directly. It says, how can you be sure of a calling from God? What if I got it or get it wrong? Again, the trick modernity played on us and continues to, is that all of our decisions are couched in this black and white, you get it right, you get it wrong thing. And specifically when it comes to the way we talk about calling. I'll be in conversations with young adults who are either deciding about college or like in college and deciding about their jobs. And they're paralyzed about making a right or wrong decision. What if I miss? And it often, like the sentence often sounds like how do I know that's where God wants me? I am not so sure that I'm not so sure that God very often has like hyper specifics about like he would really like you to go to USC and not to go to UCLA. Maybe once in a while there are those things, and if that's the case, like that's sort of on God to be really clear, right? And I've said this before, and I get in a little bit of trouble saying this, but if God is a loving God, and if God is a loving father, loving parent, then which thing sounds more loving? A, I've given you some clues to make a right decision here about what I want for you. So get out there and do your best and make the best decision. And if you blow it, boy, I hope you choose rightly. I haven't given you enough. It's not entirely clear. So there's a little bit of you're a little in the dark here, but gosh, I really hope you choose the right thing. Does that sound loving, or does it sound loving to say, where do you want to go? I've spent all this time growing you into the person you are because I love you. I'm thinking about my kids. Because I love you and I like who you're becoming. Where do you want to go from here? What's in your heart? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Let's talk about that. I will go with you. I will go before you, and I'll go with you, and I'll be behind you. I'll be on your right, and I'll be on your left. and we'll go into what you want to go into next, and we will work this out together, and I will continue to form you into the person I want you to be, because the real calling in your life is not about making the right or wrong choice about a school, about a job, about a relationship, about a whatever. The real calling in your life is to more deeply fall in love with me and more deeply fall in love with who I'm making you to become the person that I'm forming you into. That's your real calling. So where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I'll go with you, and we'll continue to do what we've been doing up till now. I think the second one sounds more loving. I think the second one sounds more like God. When I hear that, when I say that to other people, I have more of a sense of actual divine care and divine love. Getting it right or getting it wrong, let's leave that to other categories. Let's leave that to other moments. Let's leave that to mathematics. But when it comes to your calling and who you're becoming, man, I don't know if there's a whole lot of right or wrong. I think there's wisdom, and I think there is grace, and I think there is growth, and I think wisdom and grace and growth include both victories and include failures. They include bullseyes and they include missteps. And I think if the scriptures teach anything about this, is that he is reconciling all things to himself through Christ, and that he works all things out for the good of those who love him. I think that's what calling, when we talk about calling, those are the texts I like to call couch calling in. He really is working everything out. Maybe we can be less afraid of making the wrong choice and more trusting that the calling in us is to become more and more his. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the At Sea Podcast. I have been reading at the end, I almost forgot this, I've been reading at the end excerpts from this book that Scott Erickson and I are releasing in October. And this prayer poem seems actually somewhat appropriate to this week's set of questions. And it goes like this. It is confounding that the Christian tradition of resurrection carries yesterday with it. The resurrected body of Jesus was marked by the scars of his betrayal, his injury, and his death. Resurrection means carrying my past without shame or embarrassment. Resurrection means that newness reframes and redefines what was. Resurrection means I carry my yesterday with me. I carry my yesterday with me. Some of that means holding on to joys and lessons I cherish. I carry my yesterday with me, and some of that means bearing the marks of injury, trial, and loss. I carry my yesterday with me. Teach me to do so in a way that includes all of me. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the At Sea Podcast. Until next time.